Veritas is a recognized global innovator in comprehensive data management which scales to any size enterprise. Named the Gartner Magic Quadrant leader 14 times for data center backup and recovery, Veritas currently supports vital government missions at every level: local, state, federal, and U.S. partner nations. Veritas is an industry leader with a global footprint. Holding senior technology and leadership positions, including Executive Vice President of Symantec Global Services, McKinsey, partner and founder of McKinsey's software practice, President of Silver Lake's $4 billion enterprise product group, and a globally recognized enterprise software innovator. Please welcome to the stage the CES Government 2020 Industry Keynote, Veritas Chief Executive Officer, Greg Hughes.
Thank you. Thank you. It's great to be here. And I first of all want to start with thanking General Kelly for his service to our country. It's truly inspiring to see him here. And also thank all of you who are serving our country as well. I really deeply appreciate it. So thank you very much. You can give yourselves a hand. Please do that. I'm going to talk about operational resilience in a digitally transforming world. As we continue to apply technology to improve our entities and really accelerate our mission, we at the same time have to pay attention to resiliency. So let me start with a personal story. This is an F-16 fighter jet. And I'd really like to tell you about the combat missions, dangerous combat missions that I flew all around the world in the F-16. But unfortunately, I can't do that because I was the nerdy kid in the back lab working on the software that supported the F-16. So I'd love to tell you those stories, but I'm going to talk about the software that underpins the F-16. It was the first digital fly-by-wire jet. It was designed to be inherently unstable because that instability allowed it to move more quickly, to be more maneuverable and more agile. But what that meant is that pilots couldn't control it. It couldn't be flown manually. So computers had to be introduced into the control loop. And the computers would accept thousands of inputs from all the sensors around the plane, accept some of the information from the pilot, and literally control the plane. And that's why pilots say about the F-16, we don't fly the F-16, the F-16 flies us. And it was that dependency on technology is really full digital transformation when you think about it. And it meant that we had to look at ways to vastly improve operational resilience. And that was the beginning of fault-tolerant computing. And the central lesson I learned at that time in improving operational resiliency is that the principles were very simple. You have to have redundancy to accept failures of components. But applying those principles is deceptively difficult. That was the challenge because systems work in only one way, but they can fail in countless ways. So now I lead a company whose mission really is focused on availability, protection, and insights of your data. Many of you are customers of ours, and I want to thank you for that. We're the leading backup and recovery provider in the world. And I lead a group of 6,000 people and I'm honored to lead this organization. And so I spent a lot of time talking to folks like you in technology, in the government sector, in the commercial sector. We serve 95 of the Fortune 100. And one of the things I'm really hearing is that the digital transformation you're embarking on is increasing the dependency on IT. And if the resiliency doesn't follow that and the digital transformation outpaces that, that opens us all up to risks. Some examples, British Airways, small failure in their IT system led to a complete collapse of London Heathrow Terminal 5. Flights canceled, crazy. Company here, Hydro, which is a Norwegian mining company, also had challenges in their IT systems. They had to resort back to manual processes. Well, we're getting into the era where you cannot resort back to manual processes. Just like the F-16, our enterprises, our missions require that the systems work at all time. And that's why my main message to you is we need a concerted government-wide emphasis on resiliency and operational resiliency at the same time as we're transforming our systems digitally. Those two have to go hand in hand. What's the new combat damage? This is the combat damage I hear about these days when I talk to our customers. It's cyber, and we're all involved. You know, everybody's on the battlefield, so to speak. And one of the biggest threats is ransomware. I hear that from executives in the government, in the commercial sector, all around the world. If they haven't been hit, they know somebody that's been hit. And it's existential. You know, the bad guys get in. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when. Spear phishing works and the malware gets in. And here in the public sector, we've done some research and we've found that the number of ransomware attacks has grown by 120% since 2016. And also, maybe it's not shocking, but even the entities that pay a ransom, which is not advised to do, even the ones that pay a ransom don't always get their data back. 13% of the time, you won't get your data back. And that's something we've found in practice too, is we help our customers. We worked with a large customer trying to recover from a massive ransomware attack. They paid the ransom, never got their data back. We helped them recover their data while they were running on their manual systems. So where do we go to learn about how to build operational resiliency? I think a great area to learn from is the leader really in digital transformation. And the sector that is leading digital transformation is the financial services sector. They spend about 12% of their revenues on IT and technology, which is about double any other sector in the industry. And you know, we all live the rapidly transforming world and the experiences they're creating. I mean, I can't remember the last time I've actually went into a branch. I use my mobile phone, I use online banking, so it's very, very changed. So what has the financial sector done? A few years ago, there was a joint public-private sector effort to simulate cyber attacks on the financial services industry, and this was called the Hamilton Series. It was led by the Treasury Department. And what they found was a vast set of vulnerabilities that needed to be addressed very quickly, or they could potentially have economy-wide implications. If there's a run on a bank because of an issue, that could affect the rest of the economy. So what came out of that is a program called Sheltered Harbor. Sheltered Harbor is a program designed to really protect financial institutions in case there was a catastrophic issue like a massive cyber attack. It was voluntary. It involved the best minds in the public and private sector, about 200 experts across some of the most sophisticated institutions on the planet, building this and developing this program. And so what was Sheltered Harbor? Sheltered Harbor has three core components. Data vaulting, which means backing up the data on a regular basis in a standardized format, non-tamperable, immutable, encrypted data backed up and protected. Second, resiliency planning, multiple ways to bounce back. And the third is testing and certification that these requirements are met. And we can really just generalize these concepts to apply to our own organizations. And the general concepts are make sure all your critical data is protected. Number two, develop detailed recovery plans. And third, test those recovery plans against many and all you can failure scenarios. So you look at this and you're probably looking at it going, well, those are pretty obvious, Greg. Those are pretty obvious principles. I understand those principles. 200 experts, the best and the brightest, boiled it down to these three things. Well, I think the challenge is, because we're still having problems, we're still having risks, there's still issues with IT systems failing. I think the problem is just like that experience I had when I was younger in the 80s. The core principles are simple, but applying them in practice is very difficult. okay? So that's the challenge. And so I'm going to give you 5 questions you can ask your organizations. When you go back on Monday, back to the office, here are the 5 questions you can ask to find out, are you applying these principles in your own organization? The first is, what data do we need to protect? This is a challenging question to answer. We've done a lot of research, and we've found that in the typical enterprise, over half the data is what we call dark data. It's not managed, it's not classified, we don't know who owns it, we don't know if it's valuable, we don't know if it's cat videos, Is it something intellectual property or cat videos? We don't know. Very challenging. So we need to shine a light on that data and make it visible. Map it to the systems, understand what's in there, and that's the first step. Second question to ask, how are we going to manage exponential growth? In most of our customers, data is growing 20 to 25% a year. So here's some numbers, and they get pretty big. 1 petabyte of typical data is about 3 billion individual files. Gartner estimates by 2025 there'll be 175 zettabytes of data, and you do the math, at least our experts say that's going to be over 500 quadrillion files. That's impossible to deal with on a manual basis. What we have to have is good automation and to make sure we don't have to do it manually, and standardization to lower the complexity, a platform approach to reduce the complexity of managing that information. If your teams are not coming back to you and saying, that's our strategy, there's a problem. Third question, are we wrongly assuming the cloud will protect our data? Now, this is pretty interesting. We do a regular survey asking people who should probably know better, is the cloud going to protect your data? Will your cloud provider back up your data? And 85% of these people say yes. The reality is, that's flatly wrong. This is the excerpt. This is an excerpt out of a cloud service provider's service agreement that says very clearly, you are responsible to secure and protect and back up your data. So make sure your teams are not wrongly assuming it's the CSP taking care of it. Very important to do. Ask your teams and ask them again. Third, next, do we sufficiently test our recovery plans? Now remember from the sheltered harbor principles, having recovery plans and testing those recovery plans, absolutely vital. There were 2 of the 3 core principles of resiliency. But we found when we asked that almost half of the people we talked to in state and federal governments were not aware of recovery plans or had not tested them. That's just way too much. And so it really makes you wonder, why is this? Principles are fairly simple. We all know them. You can come at the problem of operational resiliency in 1,000 different ways, and they'll boil down to these principles we just discussed. But we're having trouble putting it in practice. And I think it really comes down to my final question that I would like you to ask your teams. Do we have a high resilience mindset? That's really important. Researchers have actually looked at organizations that cannot fail, that are a combination of technology and people, and they cannot fail. Using that fighter jet example earlier, aircraft carrier flight deck crews, the landing crews, they cannot fail. It's very difficult, challenging work, and researchers have looked at how they manage themselves, how they operate, and here are the basic principles. They have a commitment to resilience from the top down. Make sure you've got that. Second, wherever they can adopt it and apply it, they use automation and standardization. Why get a human error into the loop? And finally, they have a preoccupation with failure. What does that mean? Small failures lead to big failures. They get on them right away and address them. So I'm going to end and just say, look, digital transformation is great, but it also increases your dependency and our dependency on technology. The basic principles to improve resiliency are pretty clear and pretty basic, but applying them in practice requires focus, a mindset, and questions. And I ask you to take these questions to your organization when you go back into the office on Monday. So thank you very much for this morning, and enjoy the rest of your day. Take care.